today we're actually exploring and deep diving on one of the workflows that we think is really cool. Also, we done a challenge over the last couple of months with this. So we sent this out to both of our communities. So this workflow is really deep diving into that and helping us understand a little bit more. The other thing I'll mention is that actually everybody that is joining this session is going to have a chance to try it out. So Ellie has been so kind in offering a month's free Polycam to anybody that's joining this particular session. As you were going through this, look at it, see what's cool, and I'd love for you to actually try it out. But first, let's just dive into a quick round of intros. So Ellie, I would maybe start with you and just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks for that intro, Dan. Yes, it's been a great previous month. This collaboration challenge with Gravity Sketch has been really, really cool. So dope to see everything that creators made. And as y'all will see in the chat, the submissions are so diverse and so different, and really like itch that part of your brain that asks like, what actually can I achieve with this unique workflow? So a little bit about me. I'm a creative technologist and community manager at Polycam. I started my journey as a creative technologist about 5 years ago. The pandemic hit, I was a photographer, and I had no work because there were no events. So I started to learn how to operate a camera in virtual space. And Blender, as some of you may know, shout out Blender heads in the chat if there are any. Blender is free and open source. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. And I hopped in there, learned how to use a virtual camera, started creating renders, started making cool scenes. And then I wanted to generate renders really quickly, but didn't really have the modeling skills to do that. And I discovered actually Polycam before it was Polycam and started using the tool that our CEO and CTO, the company that they worked at before. And so I've been a Polycammer, a Polyscammer since day one. And I've been using it in my artworks. So that's my journey with Polycam. That's my journey with creative technology. And I feel so excited to sort of pass the baton forward and cultivate these spaces for creators and artists like myself to grow and figure out new workflows. Yeah, shout out Blender in the chat. Doreen, Blender is okay. Fair enough, you know? Yeah, so let me just, on the next slide, if Shauna, you could go to the next slide. This is just a little hype reel of some of my artworks as like a 3D hobbyist. But what's so exciting about all these pieces to me is that they all feature a photo scan. So that hand you see in this clay themed universe, that's a photogrammetry scan. This is a BTS of a render I made while I was living in Texas, hence the saguaro cactus. I used to go to Hobby Lobby, and instead of buying stuff, I would scan stuff, and it felt like a little shopping spree. This was my first large scale scan. So I scanned this whole background, all those rocks in the foreground, and the concrete wall behind it. And it's really awesome to scan bigger spaces now and see how much Polycam has improved. But yep, this was a little cute render, surreal render I made back in the day. If anyone knows Quarter Crew, this was a Quarter Crew VFX submission. All of the characters and environment in this scene are photogrammetry. I used Mixamo to rig these little food items and made them dance. And yeah, I got a shout out from Ren on this, if any of y'all know Ren. And this was a one I was really proud of. I was working with liquid simulations for the first time. Those columns are actually candlestick holders from Hobby Lobby. And that's something that's super, super cool about photogrammetry and spatialized 3D in general is scale. So being able to play with scale in your work, scan something that's small in real life, blow it up in digital life, and vice versa with the AR feature. Yeah, so this is a little bit about me. I'm, a creative at heart, so it's so great for to have this opportunity to work with Dan and Gravity Sketch, and pass the baton forward. Yep. And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it makes sense to even start this conversation with why, like why scan to 3D. Often when we talk about this workflow, we're talking about the benefits of designing for scale or designing for real life, integrating Polycam into this conversation. Also, there's a speed to that. And I just wonder maybe from your end, Ellie, before we go into this Polycam Gravity Sketch mashup, why scan to 3D? Like, what's the reason that we need to be thinking about this?
There's so much utility and artistry that goes into scanning and bringing real life objects into the 3D space, from archiving objects in our physical realm, from having a workspace to extract measurements very quickly and efficiently for builders and engineers and tinkerers. This is incredibly helpful to streamline a workflow. Additionally, for VFX artists, being able to bring an object into the digital realm and extract the light information, that's super useful when you're doing CG work. And Polycam offers a whole slew of tools that include different types of 3D reconstruction, as many of you may know, from Gaussian splatting to LiDAR scans to photogrammetry, and more. So yeah, scanning is an amazing workflow, and it's for everyone, really.
Yeah, and we wanted to test this out, right? So we basically asked a what if question, and then and posed that to the community in the form of a challenge. Yeah, I mean, we set a challenge to our community on the next slide here to scan, to export out of Polycam, to import into Gravity Sketch, design and reimagine. And the brief was simple. It was use a 3D scanning tool to design a bespoke product. So there's an emphasis on human-centered design within that. And that was the frame of reference that we started with. But what amazed us was how diverse the entries were. Everybody has a different perspective on this workflow, and everybody has a different potential to where it can go. So that was really exciting for us. And we also wanted to bring two communities together, which we love doing. I think Daniela just mentioned in the chat earlier on, there's something special when we actually just bring different softwares together and different communities together and just see what happens. And that's what this challenge was all about. I mean, Ellie, you gathered, we did a registration period for this competition through a Google Forms, on the previous slide. And yeah, Ellie, you gathered that registration form. So you want to talk to these two pie charts here?
Yeah, it was really exciting to see how many people signed up in such a short amount of time. We had over 91 signups, and many of the participants had used Polycam before, but not used Gravity Sketch, used Gravity Sketch and not used Polycam. And so that cross-pollination that Dan is talking about was super exciting to us. We also kind of got a little overview of what people were most excited about, and we can check these out on the next slide. So people were signing up for lots of different reasons, from experimentation to learning to being able to translate VR to real life and vice versa, exploring the 3D world, simple stuff using a scan, virtual freaking reality. Let's go. Excited. Yeah, it was just really cool to see the wide range of people tuning in and participating. Yeah, it was, and the turnout, as you'll see, it was well worth all this hype at the front of this talk today.
Absolutely, and as we said, we wanted to dive into this workflow a little bit deeper, extract the benefits that you might be able to gather from this workflow. So we picked out 5 entries that I think encapsulated what we saw. And we're going to go through them one by one, and shout out to, I think, Ray, can you scan footwear images as well? You'll see an answer to that. One of them, of course, is a footwear image. The background here is a footwear image. We're glad to see that one come through. But just on the next slide here, we have Sarah designing tailored for her, or extracting that benefit of designing tailored for me, or that personalization aspect of it. What you can achieve when you actually scan either your physical self or your friend or a family member and design something that's bespoke to them. I think it's such an interesting thought. And she designed some skateboard safety gear. You'll see in the next slide here the video. This is her process, which is absolutely amazing. From my end, I think what's interesting is when you scan so human-centered or for human, you got this bespoke aspect of it, which is really cool. You know, sometimes like you might fall in a certain way on a skateboard, and that's not actually matched by the safety gear that you have. So you can take that aspect of it, which is really interesting. But anything caught your eye from this one, Ellie?
Yeah, it was really exciting to see a submission with a scan of a human, having the prompt having been human-centered design at the time. So super cool to see a human scan, and then such a unique use case of designing safety gear on top of the scan.
Yeah, it's so cool. And then just prompting maybe the next slide, we did a Discord halfway through the challenge. I think you met Adrian through the Discord, right, Ellie?
Yeah, we had a little challenge check-in over on Discord where a bunch of participants tuned in and expressed some of the challenges that they were facing halfway through the process. And so we had the privilege to meet Adrian and hear more about his background. He's an architect who's been using Polycam for a while, capturing spaces and totally different capture mode methods. So his experience is scanning spaces, houses, rooms, exteriors, and it was cool to see Adrian pivot into this kind of art space and create this work. The process behind this here, Adrian, he went to you can see this video. He went to a museum and scanned a bunch of historic art pieces and was able to design on top of those scans in Gravity Sketch. And it was really cool to see the context of these art pieces completely change when brought into the 3D space. And then also to see him design sort of these AR gold jewelry items in literally on top of these historic art pieces. It's really cool. Cutting edge of art, I would say.
Absolutely. What's interesting to me is that when you actually scan he scanned his environment, which was really interesting. We kind of expected everybody to be scanning a product or a thing, but he's scanning as an environment. And the benefit there being actually you can design in the environment, so you can get the context of the environment, which I think is a really interesting take, something that I didn't expect to see actually from the challenge, just showing the diversity and the angle that people are taking on this. The next one here speaks into my background from the footwear world, so I was excited to see this workflow. So Doug did something amazing, designing directly for the athlete or directly from athlete feedback. This shoe is actually his shoe, so he's the athlete here. He looked at his running shoes and decided how could I improve the running shoe by looking at the wear pattern. And coming from my background as an Adidas for 10 years and worked in footwear for many years, I think this is just, I've never seen a workflow like this. It's really fascinating to take the approach of seeing where the wear happens, or seeing how the function, or seeing how the output of a shoe happens, and then designing according to that. So I think that was really cool. Like Doug's done a great job of this. And I know, speaking to a few footwear brands, that actually this workflow of, not exactly this, but scanning samples and designing over the top of samples is a workflow that actually some footwear brands are starting to take on now, and it's speeding up things because they don't need to send samples across the world back and forth. So that's super interesting. I think there's some there's some images on the next slide. And Ellie, what caught your eye with this one?
This submission is awesome. Sometimes in the 3D tech space, it can feel like environmentalism, sustainability takes the back seat, but that doesn't have to be the case, and we see this here. So it's really cool to see not only like a fresh footwear design, but like an upcycled type process in this particular workflow.
Yeah, nice. We've got another couple that I'd love to bring on, if that's right. So on the next slide, yeah, another Gregory actually joined us in that Discord live too. So Ellie, I think you met him. He done something super cool. He was very enthusiastic about this workflow. Do you want to talk to it?
Yeah. We met this artist over on Discord, and at the time he had no idea what he was going to make, and so when it comes to photogrammetry, if you're new to photogrammetry, it can be overwhelming to think about the possibilities, right? And that's kind of where this artist was at that time. And one thing I like to encourage people to do is just scan the objects in your space, bring it into a virtual space, and see how you can iterate on that. Like even if it just starts as a doodle, the doodle will evolve into something else. And so this artist scanned Akai, A-K-A-I MIDI, and then started to model on top of it. So it was like a sleek iteration of the MIDI in digital space, sort of acting as a prototype. And I think the idea behind this was to eventually design his own knobs and buttons that are literally to scale to this MIDI scale. So this was really cool to see because, again, it was so different than the other submissions.
Yeah, and Greg's actually in the chat. He's
heck
in the
yeah.
chat as AJ Fletcher.
I'm Greg.
So good to see you, Greg. Thanks for joining. I loved the enthusiasm that Greg had joining the Discord, and if he was with us or speaking on stage today, you'd hear that enthusiasm. He's learning a bunch of new workflows at the moment. I think you call yourself, Greg, a technologist, experimenting with a bunch of different workflows. I think you've used Gravity Sketch for a while. Polycam was somewhat new. And it's great to see you refining that, using it, testing it out, seeing what's good, seeing what works. And the output of this is fascinating. It's just like, it's a minimalist version of what's currently out there on the market at the moment. And that approach can be taken right across the board. It's like you can scan things in products that that you use already, scan them in, and actually design over the top of them. And with that scan, you've got that live feedback loop with what would I change on this product, and that's a fascinating thing to play with, right?
Absolutely. I love that point you just made, Dan. Like, I think it's easy to fall into this pattern of thought that things around us are fixed, but this workflow really encourages us to iterate and become tinkerers.
Absolutely. And there's actually one more that we'd love to show you today, and I'm very, very excited because he's actually with us here today. So this is Darian Moore. We loved his entry, and we wanted to get Darian here with us today to actually talk to what's the process like. I mean, Ellie and I can talk to it from an idealist point of view, but Darian's doing this process. He's using this process. He can give us tips and tricks and what he liked, what he doesn't like. How did he approach the conversation, the process, and what tips would he give to you as a user if you were going to go and try it? And as we said at the start, we're going to give you a month of Polycam so you can go and try it. So I'd love to welcome Darian to the stage, if that's all right. Hello,
Hello.
Darian. Are you with us?
Yeah, what's going on?
Hey, Darian. What's
Hey,
up?
not
Thanks for
much.
joining. We're
Yeah,
so excited to have you here today.
yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for joining. And I'd actually just like to hand it over to you to talk through your design, if that's all right. But firstly, please introduce yourself and your background, what you do.
Yeah, I'm Darian. I'm an artist in Seattle, Washington, US, and I've been using actually Gravity Sketch and the VR spec since it was the Oculus. I think it was originally called the Oculus way back, and yeah, just seeing the different programs kind of iterate from then until now has been really cool. But I just paint stuff. That's all I really do, man. I just like I'm an artist and I paint stuff. And uh, right now I've been trying to do these little like planter guys.
Yeah, cool.
Ooh.
And yeah, those are really really fun to do. And yeah, I was trying to figure out a way to carry those. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm just an artist
No,
in Seattle, doing cool stuff for a while. I've been using VR for a long time, and yeah, I paint and go to local markets to sell my stuff.
yeah, no, please do. We'll bring up the slides again. Please do talk through your submission.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, so basically, I was trying to think of a way to utilize the bike share program we have here, which is like scooters and bikes that you can use around town. And I have these planters, like I said, and shown that I was trying to put into the front basket of the actual bikes. They have these little baskets up front, and I couldn't really figure out a good way to do it without crushing the plants and stacking them. So I was trying to think of what I could do to put in there to kind of protect them. And so I think I had this idea a long time ago when I first was starting to sell at the markets. And I think I contacted Lime and they didn't have any 3D models or anything that I could reference. So I used Polycam and I just scanned these things when they're just out on the street, imported them into Gravity Sketch. And then, like Ellie was saying earlier, like being able to play with scale is like really, really nice. And being to import it into different environments with different lighting was actually really, really cool to see that to add a level of immersiveness to it. And then also, I think in one of the slides, I don't know, one of the slides there, I also got some of the surrounding environment, which is pretty cool. So it really kind of, yeah, there we go. It really kind of like solidified. Like once I got it to scale in there, it felt really, really like real, which was cool. So being able to design while looking and putting my hands into and around the virtual bike was very, very good. Very, very felt very natural. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it really is amazing. Yeah, I loved it because you were solving a problem, a real problem that you had, that you were just going in and resolving, and there was no barrier to entry. It's like, hey, I can just scan it, I can just bring it into VR, I can solve that problem. It's like, 10, 15 years ago, that's a challenge, that's a real challenge to solve that problem that you have. Now it's like there's tools available that you can just go and do it. I also like the fact that you tried to contact Lime for the 3D model. I think that's great. It just speaks to
I knew it was a stretch. I knew it wasn't going to be. I didn't think that they really would, but maybe it's like someone had like some like production sketches or something I can get at. But I'm sure that's also probably private information. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. But it speaks to, for
Yep.
me, it speaks to the speed of the workflow. It's how quickly you can get it in.
yeah,
This is so awesome. I like that you um, scanned in order to capture the bike itself, but the environment around the bike sort of enhanced your experience of making the art as an artist, feeling like you were really in the space. Um, I'm not sure how long you've been using Polycam for, but there's a bunch of features that let you like separate the subject from the background. And that's really fun to play with too, because I can imagine seeing this Lime bike design in different environments. Like, I don't know, you're in Seattle, right? So like in front of the Space Needle or by the water.
ooh, yeah. Oh,
Could be
definitely,
really cool.
definitely do that for sure. And I definitely did that. And it's so immersive. And sometimes when I was in there modeling, like you can kind of like I'll move around a rock that's not there. Like you can kind of see there's like a rock in there, and I'm like, I'll like sculpt something and then be like, oh no, there's a rock, and then realize it's just a virtual thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
immersive.
that's cool too, right? Because it's like, okay, there's a rock in there. How do I change and adapt my design to accommodate these kinds of obstacles? And you wouldn't have that realization or experience with just a 3D model sent to you by the company. It's more of a, a real life capture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But oh, so just to explain what that little slide is really quick, it's like a collapsible bucket. That was kind of the idea. You could like a hamper thing. You fold it, you put it, it drops into that front basket, and then it has kind of like those camera bag shelving, soft shelving things that I could put on the side, and that would kind of keep the plants from being crushed. That was the idea.
This is so cool. I've literally had this frustrating experience so many times. I live in New York, and we have City Bike out here. Um, and I've like tried to put my phone in the basket or other items that I'm carrying, like wrapped it in my sweater so it doesn't break or fly off. And then I think all of us have had the experience where you're like biking down the road and someone has put something in the basket and it's like making the most horrendous sound, just clanking and banging. So this is, it's a fun idea, but also this is a legitimate product.
Yeah, I'm tagging Lime Bike and hoping that they see this.
Yeah, you never know.
Hopefully, please hire me. Yes.
So I'd
Were
love
you
to
able
understand your. Oh, sorry, Ellie. Go on.
go ahead.
Yeah, Darian, I'd love to understand your process and how you tackled it, and perhaps even if you had any tips for
Oh
running
yeah,
this workflow. That'd be really
yeah.
interesting.
Definitely like you can kind of see in that slide there, the surrounding environment really helps with immersiveness. So trying to capture that, I know you can like mask that off, but having that there was kind of helpful just for immersiveness and scale and stuff. But the two things I was going to say that I really picked up from this was one, locking the scan slide. So locking your vertical lock and the scan slide as its own layer really helps with not moving it on accident. And I don't know how, I mean, I hope everyone here is familiar with Gravity Sketch. The little grabbing cursor, it won't grab or highlight the scan, which if you're on one of the older Quest 2s like I'm on, it keeps the frame rate higher if it doesn't, if you're not like interacting with a grabbable object. So lock that, make that not movable, and then doing the same thing with the horizon lock, so you're not getting flipped around up and around. And then what I would have done, what I wish I had done before I scanned it, would be probably just to mark the bike itself with measurements. So like I know that you can, it's like right there, I'm measuring it, but it's on the scan itself, just in terms of like reference. If I were to make it bigger and different scales, I could get like a mathematical formula of like what other things need to be bigger or smaller based on that. But yeah, just having like just like I was thinking about maybe just taping a ruler to the basket. I might do that in a little bit, just to get a better sense of scale. But those are probably my two biggest things.
Yeah, that's cool. How was the importing? How easy it was it to export out of Polycam, bring it into to Gravity Sketch? Is
It
that
is
process okay?
it's really easy. It's actually I think I did this all on my phone. I thought I was gonna have to get my computer to do stuff, but yeah, no, I scanned it on the phone with the photogrammetry, and then put that, and then once I had it on the phone, I just uploaded it on Landing Pad. So it was a two-step process, and then that's linked up to your headset. So I just threw that on, and yeah, it was very, very fast, which is
Hmm.
very, very cool. Yeah.
There's a lot
That's
of
great.
love. Oh, sorry, go on, Ellie.
Uh, Speaking of measurements and wanting to have had measurements beforehand, there's actually a pretty robust measuring tool in Polycam. And you can now save those measurements and export them. So that's really handy. And there's like a
Sweet.
snapping mechanism. So you can do, point A to point B, but you can also do area. And then there's rescaling also in Polycam. And that's pretty helpful. Um, and everyone here in the chat is getting a month pro of Polycam. So these tips aren't just me sending love to Polycam, but also trying to help everyone succeed with that. But yeah, measuring um,
What
Yeah,
another
measurement is
tip I would say though, also be very, very slow with your scan. I feel like you want to be as slow as possible, very, very steady and slow. Makes a much
yeah,
better
absolutely. I see on the wheel, it's a little bit wobbly there.
yeah. I didn't
Hopefully,
know
that's
it's
not a
not yeah,
realistic
it's not
time.
great at that.
That would be bad. But this sort of wobbliness comes from input images that are a little bit off focus.
Yeah.
Or blurry. So these like wobbly bits can all be remedied by like increasing your input media quality. That being said, like for something like this, part of the amazing thing of Polycam is that you can be quick and dirty about it. Like if you don't want to spend, you know, 30, well, 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, like on the side of the road doing this, then this is okay too, right? It works for these
Yeah,
case.
this I think this scan took me like maybe a minute total, and it's crazy. I think if you zoom in on it, you can even read the text on there and stuff. It's very, very for how fast it was. It's very accurate.
Yeah, yeah, you can see a lot of detail. Um, I'm curious about like the mesh density. Did you get a chance to remesh at all?
I didn't try to do any of that. Like I said, I was just trying to do it all on the phone, see how streamlined I could do this because I was scanning a couple other things and I wasn't trying to mess with that. But I know that you can, and I know that I definitely want to bring this into Blender to kind of light it and see some cloth properties, but also I thought it'd be really cool that I've scanned the bike is I could just print that front little basket in 3D with a 3D printer at a lower scale, and then
Mhm.
start using prototypes to like actually have fabric and drape in there. So I think I might just do that next.
Absolutely. That's so cool. We have so many folks over on the Reddit 3D printing with Polycam scans as a base. And that's so awesome. This is something I want to get into too. So very exciting. Speaking of Blender, um, there's a bunch of community over on Discord if y'all care to join at some point in the future. But one of our artists, she created this tool called like Ortho Export, and it allows like batch export into Blender. It's like remesh, retopologize upon import, and then you can export like the orthographic image of of any scan. Um, so yeah, any Python devs in the chat, like more. This is me advocating for more Polycam add-ons.
Also, if you're a dentist, please let me upload the 3D scan of my mouth, and so I want to see that in virtual reality as well.
Well, that's me. Every time I go to the dentist, I'm like, "Can I get that? Can you send that
Yeah,
file to me?"
can I get that file?
I know we're supposed to be talking about dental health, but
Yeah,
let's talk about 3D.
exactly. Always.
I was just reading through the comments there as you guys were chatting. There's a lot of love for actually bringing the environment into the design process. I mean, actually, I think John, somebody mentioned, imagine if actually in AI pass-through, you could actually within Gravity Sketch scan the environment. I know engineers are sitting there outside the room, but I would love to understand from your perspective how important you've obviously got the environment here with the Lime bike here. How important was having that in with in with the 3D so you could design over the top of that with that in mind?
It was I mean it was for immersiveness really. It's just like I think that I think in my initial post on Instagram, one of them is the slide of just the scooter and having that mask completely from any like environment and then putting a virtual one is nice, but there is like your brain does it has a quicker switch on knowing that that's fake and the scales don't feel as real. But when you see it like next to a rock or a sign or a path, I can really get a sense of how this visual, like how this much space will take up, and kind of like move it around more realistically, like literally like to scale through pass through and like seeing it on a table sort of thing. So yeah, it's really really nice to be able to have a environmental scan. It really helps the brain realize volume in reality better. It's like a subconscious thing, I think.
Yeah, totally. yeah, seeing the environment is super cool. And then changing the environment with AR is even cooler. I see here in the chat, Topher Sipes, not sure, says, I most recently used Polycam and drone footage to do a larger scale scan for a client project to help envision a customized water tank. Super cool. Lots of folks will input, like run drone footage through our Gaussian splat visualizer, which is really incredible for visualizing larger spaces. And that particular processing type captures light in a really remarkable way that helps folks like envision like an environment fully. So that's a really cool project, Topher. Thanks for sharing.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, I'm going to have to be a little bit time police. Unfortunately. So unless there's any other urgent, pressing questions that could have come through the chat here, I just wanted to share an appreciation with yourself, Darian, for joining with us today. You know, I think there's something different when actually the community comes together. To come back to my original point, what was special about this challenge was that we really mashed two communities that we thought were really compatible together and asked a what if question, like what if we just lowered the barrier to entry here, gave people an opportunity to design and see what happens. So I thought that was really amazing, and you're one of many great entries that has really changed not just my perspective, but also I hope the community's perspective on what can be achieved with this workflow. To thank you for that, and for the other people featured within this deck, we're actually going to give everybody in the deck here who were featured, and yourself, 12 months Gravity Sketch Pro, but also 12 months Polycam Pro. So thank you so much, Darian. The entries were really, really good, and we hope to see more of it over the course of the next year.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited to use it and some more workflows. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's so awesome to see what you made. As an artist myself who used Polycam back in the day, I was not on the pro tier, so it's really sick to be in a position to pass it forward in this way, and also just see what you get up to in the next months.
I'm on the Discord.
Oh, hell yeah. Heck yeah.
Also, check out my Instagram at KioCell. I also paint cool bike stuff, bike pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. It's cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. And also, chat, so excited to see what you submit. Please share with us what you make. Polycam and Gravity Sketch on Reddit, on Discord, on Instagram. We want to get your work out there, and we want your work to be seen. And I personally want to see your work too.
Yeah, even if you missed the challenge, don't let that stop you. Please submit.
Challenges, I'm sure.
Say again, Darian?
I'm sure there'll be future challenges.
Of course. But just as a reminder, like I said at the start, everybody that's attended today, we want you to try. So with that in mind, you'll get an email after the session in the next couple of days with how we're going to dish out Polycam Pro to you guys, to give it for you guys to try for a month. And we'd love to see what you guys create and see how you bring it into Gravity Sketch, bring it into other softwares, and just work with this idea in mind that actually if we start with a scan, we can end up with something designing on top of real life, which is really powerful.